Here are 10 key ideas that will power our movement for great schools. First, we will respect the right of parents to control the education of their children. Second, we will empower parents and local school board to hire and reward great principals and teachers, and also to fire the poor ones, the one whose performance is unsatisfactory. They will be fired. Like on The Apprentice, you're fired. Third, we will ensure our classrooms are focused not on political indoctrination, but on teaching the knowledge and skills needed to succeed: reading, writing, math, science, arithmetic, and other truly useful subjects. Fourth, we will teach students to love their country, not to hate their country like they're taught right now. Fifth, we will support bringing back prayer to our schools. Sixth, we will achieve schools that are safe, secure, and drug-free, with immediate expulsion for any student who harms a teacher or another student. Seventh, we will give all parents the right to choose another school for their children if they want. It's called school choice. Eighth, we will ensure students have access to project-based learning experiences inside the classroom to help train them for meaningful work outside the classroom. Ninth, we will strive to give all students access to internships and work experiences that can set them on a path to their first job. They're going to be very, very successful. I want them to be more successful than Trump. Let them go out and be more successful. I will be the happiest person in the world. But we want our children to have a great life and be successful. And 10th, we will ensure that all schools provide excellent jobs and career counseling so that high school and college students can get a head start on jobs and careers best suited to their God-given talents. This is how we will ensure a great education for every American child. And one other thing I'll be doing very early in the administration is closing up the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and sending all education and education work and needs back to the states. We want them to run the education of our children because they'll do a much better job of it. You can't do worse. We spend more money per pupil by 3 times than any other nation, and yet we're absolutely at the bottom. We're one of the worst. So you can't do worse. We're going to end education coming out of Washington, D.C. We're going to close it up, all those buildings all over the place, and you have people that in many cases hate our children. We're going to send it all back to the states. Thank you very much.
Okay, the rather long introduction, but I wanted you to see that. I hope it played. Again, with me with my producing skills, but Trump talking about education, his plan for education, and then at the end talking about closing down the Department of Education and sending money back to the schools. And good morning, everyone. Let's see. Carrie's here. AC's here. Is this Carrie and AC? Okay. But there's one other thing I wanted to show you guys on this. I'll share this screen again here, and I wanted the reason I didn't put it full screen is because I wanted to show you this. Trump's plan for religion and indoctrination in U.S. schools. Okay, so this is a very, now this impact, give him a free plug. Okay, so very negative take on this from the introduction, from the title. Their credit, they just played it. They played what Trump's message was. If you go down the comments, it's pretty funny. I live in Idaho State. It's actually intentionally failing kids. There is no equality in education. The one saying this is a bad thing are not good people. Who doesn't want this? Wow, math and arithmetic? Yeah, he did. I did notice he did repeat himself there. The comments are so hilarious. Losing leftists. No more woke. Okay, so that kind of shows you the state of things, I think, these days where again, Donald Trump is the big disruptor. He's the one coming in and laying waste to the swamp, and education is steeped in the swamp. And I think Gina put my title here: retired school teacher on eliminating U.S. Department of Education. So yes, anybody new? I was in education for about 15 years here in Southern California, San Diego City schools, middle school and high school. And it's funny, I live in outside of San Diego now, up in North San Diego County, and it's a more conservative area up here. More conservative. I say it's not quite conservative yet. It's actually been going the other way. But we have a lot of military people around here, so they keep it fairly sane. The military folks were right at the doorstep of Camp Pendleton. It's a huge Marine base here in San Diego, so they keep us relatively sane up here. But in my, let's see. Oh, Chloe's here. Where Gary goes, I go. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong one. Yeah, Chloe's here. So this country has destroyed our education. Right on, Gary. And it's outrageous the liberties these teachers have taken with our children. Yeah. And what's the key to your comment there, Chloe? Our children. That is something I ran into in my experience as a teacher. There were several times in meetings or department meetings, something like that, or small meetings, or in major meetings, seminars, that types of things, where the sentiment was given either directly or by intimation or inference that parents are the problem. Parents are in our way. These are not, they didn't go so far as to say these are our children, not their parents' children, but they did go so far as to say that the responsibility for education is not with the parents, it is with us teachers, because we know so much more than the parents. We are trained professionals. We are, it's the elitist expert class kind of thinking where we're the experts. What do parents know? They're getting in our way. And there were many times when things were intentionally held from parents in my circles, not necessarily my circle. I was vocational education. And I was really the only one doing my particular job. I was not part of it. The English department, I was not part of the history department, math, whatever. So I had my own thing going, which was my advantage. And the only way I would have done it, the only way I could have done it, I might have been able to teach history, but it probably would have, yeah, Chloe, I'd get fired by these folks if I was in the history department or math. But by the way, you can't get fired from being a teacher. That's another thing. When Trump said at the end, they'll be fired if they're bad. The only way you would get fired in there is if you tried to make sense or tried to bring some kind of traditional education standards back to the schools. If they found out you had any kind of religious faith, let alone Christian, other than some of the maybe more accepted religious faiths that you weren't really committed to. Or if you've been into a faith that had been completely steeped in wokeism. So they didn't call it woke back then. They just called it political correctness. And I always define woke in one way as political correctness on steroids. But I just love the juxtaposition on this, where in this particular, let's show it to you again, this particular site, Trump's plan for religious indoctrination is called Donald Trump's New Education, Conservative Values Over Critical Thinking. The changes will restrict diverse perspectives, suppress important discussions, undermine academic freedom, and yes, fire teachers like on The Apprentice. And so this is very ominous. They put this in a very ominous, they put that in a very ominous tone there, but yet 9 out of the 10 comments were, yeah, that's good. This is what we want. What's your problem? Who wouldn't want this? Who wouldn't want to fix our education? Because our education has been abysmal. And back when I was a teacher, there was just political correctness, but you could see the seeds of what was really coming down the pike. Education had already been ruined by the time I became a teacher. And probably like most of you, I found out last week, most of you are my generation, or a lot of you are. Probably some of us were educated before the Department of Education was created. It was created under good old Jimmy Carter back in 1977, I believe, which I was a junior and senior in high school, depending on when he would have done it. So I was pretty much through the public school system when the Department of Education took over. And I'm very thankful that I was. Before that, I was part of health education and welfare. But Jimmy Carter and all his great, one of the great things he did, the endless great things Jimmy Carter did for our country, he created the Department of Education, and the education of our children has gone, it was sliding before then, but it has gone in free fall ever since. I know Ronald Reagan tried to get rid of the Department of Education in his term, but he was just up against Congress in a lot of ways and couldn't get it done. Whether Trump will be able to do it, that's another thing. Chloe, heavy on your comments today, Chloe. Today's teachers are a product of woke universities. Yes, they are. And that's going to be the issue. He is, like his first term, he is going to hit a wall of the establishment, wall of the swamp, wall of the deep state. Deep state's probably a better, the best term for what he'll be up against, because there's machinery and there's political action in play here. And this particular area, what he's going after right now, is controlled by the teachers' unions. And the teachers' unions, believe me, I've seen the belly of the beast. I've seen teachers' unions in action. I always had a caveat. The teachers' union did negotiate my salary. I was very happy with my compensation. I always tell people, don't really listen to too many teachers tell you that they're not paid enough. In teaching, if you're a typical teacher, you work basically 2/3 of a year, I think, or 3/4 of a year, and you get paid pretty well if you extrapolate that to a year. If you add a quarter, I guess, or a third to your salary, that's your yearly rate. You have lots of time off. You have time to do other things. I had time to become a scratch competitive golfer in my spare time. I also had spare time to become a real estate investor. So the teachers union negotiated a very good deal for me, but at the same time, they advocated things that made it so much harder for me to teach my class. And not that they advocated, but they fought against a lot of the type of things that Trump is talking about. A lot of the discipline in schools, a lot of the parental involvement in schools, and discipline for mine. I was mostly in inner city schools, so for most of the trouble I had was the lax attitude towards discipline of students and the implicit racism, if I can say that without getting demonetized, that you had if you wanted to exercise discipline in your classroom. That was the biggest issue, but there was also many, many others. But minorities are the ones that the education system has failed the most because of that, because of things like that. Holding students that have a different color skin to a lower standards. That's the what George Bush called it, the racism of lowered expectation, the bigotry of lowered expectations. When you hold a person to a lower expectation because of the color of their skin or whatever it is, or maybe their gender or whatever, that's a prejudice on your part. And that's demeaning them. It's telling them, we think you are less than us, people with our tone, right? So, he'll have a lot of problems because the teachers union, there's nothing like that. A friend of ours just a couple of years ago ran for school board here around, and she did great. She was a great candidate. And the person she ran against was a teachers union person who didn't campaign, didn't think there would be any challenge. Well, our friend ran a great campaign, went out far ahead at the beginning. And then slowly, as the votes are being counted, this is I'll have a California story on counting votes. This is the first part of the California story. She was well ahead, but as the votes kept coming in over a week, 2-3 weeks time, she slowly lost her lead and it ended up losing because the teachers union mobilized. And when they realized their candidate was losing, they mobilized, and suddenly her votes came in 2-3 weeks later. And what that tells you is there's a machine, a vote producing machine. You say whatever you want about, how that smells, but it's true. The teachers union gets out votes one way or another, and they are very powerful. And that's what they're completely dedicated to. And again, that's what us conservatives, that's the 8 ball we're behind, is we have faith, we have family, we have occupation, we have church, we have community, whatever things we're involved in, neighbors. We have full lives. Hopefully that's our ideal, is to have that balance in life, to balance out be politically active, but don't let it take over your whole life, because it's politics, and politics serves the people. To allow us to be free to have these lives. But if you're a radical leftist, you have that balance. Politics is everything. Politics is your faith. These people are your friends. So they don't go away easy. In fact, they will never go away at all. I think Chloe mentioned the woke universities that they come from, and they're also, the public schools themselves are like those woke universities. They reproduce, or they start the kids early on this so they can send them to those woke universities, and so they can become really radical. There were so many times when I was a Bible club advisor at one of my schools, and the trouble we had with finding even a room. The whole reason I became an advisor, they asked me if they could use my room, because I was way back in the corner. Nobody really even knew I was there. Vocational education, right? I had one of the shop classes, and we had our meetings in there. And because we were actually daring to sing songs and read the Bible, and in the main class, classroom building, some of the tolerant people could not tolerate that, right? The people that said they were the most tolerant could not tolerate the Bible and Christian songs being sung. So that it's an entire culture. It's an entire monolithic machine that Trump is going up against here. So they will rally, they will circle the wagons, and they will throw everything they can at him to not let this happen, because there are billions of dollars at stake. There's their entire ideology, their entire reason for being is at stake. So that's what Trump will be up against. If he does this, I will be extremely impressed if he manages to pull this off. And don't get me wrong, it needs to happen. I kind of can't understand anyone who thinks we need a Department of Education other than the people I taught with, who were so invested in the gravy train that it is and the power structure that it has. Any rational person outside of education, I really don't understand the argument for a national Department of Education, other than it's just that worldview says the government is in charge of everything. So it needs to go. And anyone who thinks that the states can't educate children, they're too steeped in their ideology. So it's what needs to happen. It will make a huge difference, and I mean a huge difference, in the way we educate our children. But again, if he manages to pull it off against these people, he definitely is God's man for the time and for the situation. I've always said, or it came up recently, I don't know, always said, but as long as I've been saying it, I've always said that, there are certain people of the century, to me. Back in the 20th century, I would say the person of the century was either Winston Churchill or Ronald Reagan. And before that, in the 1800s, it was definitely Abraham Lincoln. Whether you liked what Abraham Lincoln did or not, he was, for our country anyways, he was the man of the century. And before that, obviously, George Washington was. So if Donald Trump does this and manages to eliminate the Department of Education, I'm for putting his bust on Mount Rushmore, adding it wherever it'll fit, because that will be something else. So, yeah. Yes. And again, there are many things that Carrie says, there are many things that need to be out of the hands of our government. Yes. For our federal government, for sure. But that's the idea. That was the idea of America. That's why they hate America. The idea of America is we, the people, are in charge. We're the ones in charge of our children's education. So it's Proverbs. I won't bring up the verse because I'll mess it up. But one sharing screen is enough for me. But in Proverbs, it talks, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he was old, he will not depart from it. And then it's all over Proverbs. The responsibility to educate our children, to raise our children, to educate them, is with us, not with the government. This believe it or not, another verse I think that applies to education of our children is when Jesus is talking to the Pharisees that brought him the coin of Caesar and said, should we pay taxes to Caesar? That's not a tax question. They were trying to trick him to get him to trip up. But what he said was, hey, whatever is it Caesar's picture on the coin? Okay, give to Caesar what is Caesar, but give to God what is God's. And we've always messed that up. We always missed the meaning of that. It's not about taxes. Hey, Caesar deserves your money, so give your money to Caesar. No, he's saying, look, Caesar wants everything. Caesar wants your life. Caesar wants to control you. Caesar wants to take the things that are God's because Caesar thinks he's God. Whether consciously or not, that's Caesar's mindset, right? And you could translate Caesar to big government. But don't give what Caesar's gives to Caesar, but what is God's give to God. And the raising of our children and the education of our children is God's call to us. And we have given it over to Caesar, and the results have been disastrous. So anyways, I think, Chloe says, exactly, Joel, use scripture as guidelines to how to apply our education. And Carrie, the need to go back to school, to relearn that part. It's our country. Yes, it is our country. So, but they don't think so. And the people of that worldview do not think it's your country. They think it's their country. And they had their shot. They were going full on the last 4 years. I think that Trump's first election, his first term, shocked them. They thought, with going all the way back to Obama, they really thought this Marxist revolution was going to happen, and they were going to steamroll from that point on. Trump really threw a wrench into those gears, and they managed to stop him again, however that smelled, in 2020, and they were going all in, and they lost big because people finally woke up thanks to things like This Way Network, our little small contribution. Hopefully we made a little bit of a difference, right? But now that information is not being controlled by gatekeepers, now that people have access, we saw, and the rest of the country finally woke up to see what was happening. And it took, maybe it took this thing, or it took the boys playing on the girls' teams, or the guy in the Olympics smashing that woman in the face on the boxing ring. Maybe, I don't know what it took. Or maybe it just took a guy like Donald Trump saying, hey, look how bad it is. A non-politician, a non-swamp guy, a guy who didn't come across like he was beholden to anybody but the people that he wanted to vote for him. And that's how he came across. And I think people finally got Donald Trump. think I finally got what Trump is all about. I voted for him the first time just because he was the lesser of two evils. And, if it's all going to burn down, let's just burn it down now so we can start rebuilding. And now I think I'm finally getting the full Trump effect and realizing what he is and why people are so devoted to him. And again, a lot of that is because of who he is, and a lot of it is because of the failure of the people that should be standing up for the things he's standing up. And I'm looking at you, Christian leaders, and I'm looking at you, Joel, because you're staring right back at me in this thing, right? We all have a part in this. We all have dropped the ball at certain points on our values and what this country was about, and what we have in this country, this precious gift we have with this country. We've all done our part in letting it slide away. But Chloe, did you hear about things coming home? Alvin Bragg's assistant was assaulted and robbed. Oh boy. Okay. Well, I guess I'm sorry for the man that happened, but I guess there is a certain poetic justice in that. Too bad. But maybe, again, those kinds of things we hear about, we might not have ever heard about that, but those kinds of things are finally sinking into people. And hopefully it's not too late. If it's too late to change the Department of Education, we'll see. But if Trump can do significant damage to it, if Congress can get behind him and restrict funding for it, and maybe it'll just die on the vine, that'd be great. But so again, I'm glad to see the effort is at least being made. Hopefully he doesn't spend all his ammunition on the Department of Education, because, as you guys have said, there's other things, other swamp things, other deep state departments that need to go. And maybe Vivek and Elon will help him with that. So, but I want to get back to the other part of the California story. I was telling you, the first was my friend running and being way out ahead. And as more votes being counted over 3 weeks, suddenly she ended up losing, which was a real shame, because she would have been good. She would have been a good person. She's a mom on the school board, and they don't want that, right? Well, in the city I'm living in North County, this city on the side of the ocean, very cryptic. You guys will never figure out where I am. We have a mayor's race, and we still don't know who our mayor is. This is how dysfunctional things are. And again, it's that thing where the Republican candidate was leading at first, but for some reason we're taking almost a month to count votes in this, not small city, but it's not huge, right? It's not even as big as San Diego, but we can't seem to get our mayor figured out. And again, it's that this is what life is like in a blue state. And this is what I think we've been saved from as a country. And hopefully, at least we've delayed this kind of thing significantly. But this is the dysfunction that's built in, because we're not marching down to City Hall with torches and pitchforks saying, "What are you doing?" We're just like, "Oh, well, it takes a month however long it takes for a certain candidate to get enough votes," really is what it is. And that's what happens here. Actually, it happened to my friend. It broke my heart. But that's life in the big blue here in California. So, and Gary, you are right. It is ridiculous. So, but that's all I have for today. Again, thanks for joining me. You guys are always faithful. It's always a good conversation. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing what's happening in my old profession, and hopefully it'll turn out as good as it possibly can. From my lips to God's ears, right? Thank you all for tuning in. I will see you probably tomorrow with Michael and Ben. Okay, take care. All right. And I got to